They say Rome wasn't built in a day, and nor was hell built in a decade, so let's take a tour through the underworld without having to suffer the weather to talk about the Hazbin Hotel Timeline. In the beginning. In just the first couple of minutes, the show itself already did part of our job for us. Hazbin Hotel uses some aspects of biblical lore in its own world building, but as you might expect, it deviates quite a bit. We could almost call the show a kind of historical fiction in that sense, or historical half-fiction? Or look, it's a show with some theological themes, and that's what counts here. Similarly to the beginning of the Bible's opening book of Genesis, the world of Hazbin Hotel begins with the creation of the world as we know it. Though rather than a deity speaking things into existence, the world seems to be sourced from the city of heaven, in which angels and other beings of light worship the concept of goodness itself while protecting the world from the concept of evil. The existence of cherubs in Hell of a Boss implies that there are many different types of angels, but as far as Hazbin Hotel is concerned, the main types we see are the exorcists and the seraphim. The exorcists are unique given their role to keep hell from getting overpopulated and possibly overpowered via periodic killing sprees. The seraphim, mainly Sarah and Emily for now, are basically there to keep the rest of heaven in check. They're actually named after the high-ranking angels in scripture. Their designs, not so much. Yeah, Kirby called he wants his final boss back? Actually, no, you can keep it. Let's talk about the angels. Now, in Hazbin Hotel, it was not a singular deity, but rather the angels themselves who shaped Earth in their own image. It's unknown whether there's one overarching ruler in the series, but we do know that the angels are overseers of both Earth and Hell, and they started with the creation of Adam and Eve. I mean, Lilith? No, you didn't miss something in Sunday school. Lilith herself is not a character mentioned in canon biblical lore at all. That isn't to say the idea of Lilith wasn't there, it just isn't in the Bible. Think of it as like a Bible-themed fanfiction. In any case, in Hazbin Hotel, instead of Adam and Eve, Adam and Lilith were the first humans. Here, Adam is given more characterization than he usually gets. Instead of being dude who ate an apple he wasn't supposed to, Adam was, more specifically, a misogynistic narcissist who demanded control over Lilith, who, due to her desire for independence, fled the garden. This placed her in good company with Lucifer, a high-ranking angel who didn't really vibe with the higher-up angels' visions for the world, but saw more extravagant ideas and was often treated like an outcast as a result. So, the two fell in love, wanting to share their passion for free will with the human world, but in doing so, they introduced it to evil by giving Eve the fruit from the tree of knowledge, which, you guessed it, is the exact one God told Adam and Eve not to eat. While Lucifer plays the same role as the serpent, aka Satan, in the Bible who tricked Eve and Adam into eating the forbidden fruit, Lucifer here is different in that he didn't explicitly trick Eve into it. Rather, he actually wanted to share his creative vision with the world via free will. But in transferring the knowledge of good and evil to humanity, he gave our channel its most beloved and iconic format. Oh, and I guess he also let sin creep into the world through the newfound potential of sin and disobedience. Hopelessness and ruthlessness. Just like that, one small act of disobedience let evil creep into the world. More on that in a bit. And thus, punishment had to be dealt to the perpetrators. Adam and Lilith were cast from the garden into an abyss from which they could see only the bad things free will brought about, and as anybody who's been alive for more than like 5 years understands, there's plenty of bad in the world. To make matters worse, Lucifer wasn't allowed to see any of the good of the world, which put him in a deep depression that no amount of rubber duckies could fix. They did help a little bit, though.
Oh god, who am I kidding? This sucks!
Things were very different for Lilith, however. Rather than falling into despair, Lilith took it upon herself to continue her strive for self-sufficiency and control by using her power and influence to civilize hell itself.
Adam is dead. Your deal is done, and I'm in charge now.
But Kifinosi, you blithering idiot, I hear you ask. Isn't Lilith a human? How does she have the power to civilize an entire portion of the supernatural world? First of all, don't interrupt me. Second of all, that's where we get into a character who's so sinister, so diabolical that she hasn't even shown up yet. Ru, the root of all evil. This is Ru, the creator of sin and death and the source of all the world's evil, and that's the wrong Ru. Hold on one second. Okay, so this is Ru. Now, you might have some questions, perhaps along the lines of... What the living hell was that? Ru is short for root of all evil and was drawn and mentioned in 2019 by vivziepop on Twitter, at which point she described her as the character she's most excited to get into. Being that her name is literally the root of all evil, it's safe to assume that Ru is the very evil that the angels were trying to protect the world from. But thanks to Lucifer and Lilith, albeit accidentally, she's out there. Through her release, Ru influenced the world in dark and sinister ways. Even so, although Vivzi herself has stated it's gonna be a while before Ru gets any spotlight, she's almost certainly going to be the greatest threat in the series. So no matter what form she appears in, do not trust her by any means. Okay. Now hear me out. No, let's ignore that idea and focus on the lore. Rise of the Overlords. We know that Rue is the root of all evil, and given that it took strategic planning on behalf of all angels to keep her from invading the world, it's safe to say that she's pretty darn tough. Since she crept in via the disobedience of Adam and Eve, we know that all it takes for her influence to grow is someone willing to sin. So Rue stands to gain a lot from making deals with other sinners, like, say, sinners who are fiercely determined to gain independence, who are sort of ruthless about it, who are named Lilith. Yeah, it's just a theory, but it's pretty dang likely that Lilith got her demonic powers from Rue, which is what allowed her to civilize Hell and turn it into what it is now. As Hell grew exponentially, so did its power. Through contractual deals in which stronger demons lent their power to weaker ones in return for loyalty and servitude, there came about hierarchies of sinners in Hell. But so far, there's only one, aside from royalty, that we need to really focus on: the Overlords. Really, the Overlords can basically be summarized as demons who have more power and influence than the average sinner demon. In this context, think of demon souls like money. The more you've got, the stronger you are. Characters like Alastor, Zestial, Carmilla, Rosie, the V's, etc. all have plenty of souls in their clutches, and so they have more power and influence than normal. Additionally, unwise demons can result in a loss of power, as we see from Husk, who allowed his penchant for gambling to cost him his status as an Overlord, stuck on Alastor's leash for who knows how long. It's quite probable that Lilith and Rue, through the deception of the latter, kickstarted this system and made Hell a more significant threat than it was before. Heaven sadly took notice of this and made, as Charlie described it, a truly heartless decision. They permitted Adam and the other extermination angels to systematically exterminate percentages of Hell's population so they wouldn't overtake Heaven in terms of sheer power.
We're gonna go down and exterminate demon ass.
It was a cold decision, but a calculated one. I mean, if all it took for Rue to invade the world was one person eating an apple, who's to say how much devastation a bunch of superpowered overlords could cause? And then that overlord. No discussion of Hazbin Hotel's lore would be complete without some attention to our boy Alastor, the most complicated and intriguing character in the ensemble cast. Back in 2018, before the pilot was even released, the Hazbin Hotel Twitter account released several character profiles detailing aspects of the sinners' lives and deaths before Hell. One of these describes Alastor as a former radio host and southern serial killer who died in 1933 and made a big mark upon debuting in Hell. Combining his two great loves of showboating and serial murder, good ol' Al stepped into the scene by killing numerous overlords in rapid succession, broadcasting their tortured screams for all to hear. He was very infamous throughout Hell for just how quickly he rose to prominence, to the point where Charlie and Vaggie needed no introduction to him, and the latter was shocked that Angel Dust didn't know about him.
Pleasure to be meeting you, sweetheart. Quite a pleasure.
Given just how unusual it was for a sinner/overlord to gain power so quickly to the point where even some prominent overlords looked weak in comparison, it's been speculated that Alastor's deal is with Lilith, especially given that at the time of the show's start, both have been gone for 7 years. Like, come on, the same number? There's no way that's a coincidence, right? But we digress. Theories aside, we have a whole video for those. All that matters is that Alastor is the most unpredictable overlord we've met so far, and given his clear distress at not having freedom, we can only hope there's at least some good in that soul of his. But what about the sinners? After the overlords, there are sinners to consider, the people who lived less than honest lives on Earth and find their new home in Hell as a result. We don't know a ton about most of the characters' lives before Hell, likely because that's going to be a focus later on in the series, but there is still the matter of those aforementioned biographies. We'll save Charlie for later since she was born in Hell, but as for the others, in order of confirmed death years, there's Sir Pentius, who died in 1888. He was an unstable inventor in the Victorian era. Given his personality and struggles in Hell, my best guess is that he contributed to making weapons of mass destruction, and one of these might just have backfired on the poor guy. Then Alastor, who died in 1933, we talked about him already, so on to Angel Dust, who died in 1947. He's been stated to have at least 2 siblings elsewhere, though we haven't met them in the series yet, and in this bio it's stated that he drowns out his world with narcotics and a twisted sense of humor. Sadly, this would be what took his life, as he's confirmed to have died of an overdose. Katie Killjoy, remember when she was relevant? Anyway, she died in 1992 and was a scummy news broadcaster in real life. Perhaps she tried to uncover some shady business for the ratings, but got killed in the process. Heck, maybe Tom went along with her for the sake of money, who knows? Finally, there's Vaggie, who died in 2014. We have by far the least info on her of this bunch, but given how it's later revealed that Vaggie is a fallen angel, we know that she actually went to heaven, so her cause of death was probably less scandalous. Our best guess is that she died in defense of herself or someone else, given how knives and short-temperedness are still major aspects of her character in the afterlife. As for the rest of the ensemble cast, there's not much, if any, canon information about their pre-afterlife existences. To make up for that, how about a lightning round? Fun facts: Husk is a big fan of magic shows, with vivziepop describing it as the one thing that melts his heart. Nifty is apparently the only straight character in the hotel. Fat Nuggets was a gift from Valentino. Okay, so I guess everyone's got at least one good attribute, okay. Vox was originally an older box-style TV as opposed to his flat-screen design, implying that he either changes forms with age or can shapeshift to some degree. Finally, make way for Charlie! Sometime over 200 years ago, Lucifer and Lilith decided to bring their little ray of hellshine into the world, and so Charlie Morningstar was born. As a child, some of her fondest memories are her father Lucifer sharing his visions for the world with her. Memories that, after their heartfelt reunion, would be remastered in glorious HD. Hell definition. Charlie has both angel and demon in her blood, and as such is one of the strongest and most ambitious characters. Exhausted of the constant extermination of her people, as anyone would be, she comes up with a plan to rehabilitate them in her happy hotel, later to be renamed the Hazbin Hotel. And, well, you know the rest, right? Sure, there's a tiny detail that the hotel was just destroyed and is now the primary target of a war between heaven and hell, and that Charlie is changing the very fabric of the afterlife by proving that sinners in hell can be redeemed, and therefore heaven has been killing actual people with irrefutable evidence.
Oh. Hello?
But tiny details like that surely won't be important until later on. See you guys whenever season 2 comes out, with the video that I'm sure is gonna be at least twice as long.